Happy Wednesday, everyone. So, we're here tonight with Annie, and I think you guys might recognize her. Same background, also, the little honeybee girl. So, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty great. Just a long day of work, and now I'm just going to relax, get ready for tomorrow. I'm here to talk about mushrooms, flying, whatever floats your boat here.
All right. Well, I want to learn when I saw your post about mushrooms that you had collected over the must have been the last week or week and a half. And then you said you were going to be cooking them up. So,
Alert from Google Chrome Helper. Alerts. Red circle. Just
hang
wanna
on.
fly.
My computer's talking again. Anyway, I wanted to know more about that because we live in the North Woods of Wisconsin. And first off, how did you get into this? How did you trust yourself on picking these, and what do you do with them? So go for it.
Okay, so a lot of this is rooted in natural history. So if you're someone who's interested in any kind of nature, it could be bugs, it could be plants. You pretty much learn quickly that you can differentiate things with a lot of nuance, right? And the nuance is the scary part with mushrooms. So I got into it um, kind of by accident. I just walked into work one day when I was still working as a janitor at the local brewing company. And the head brewer of the place came in one day, completely random, with a big tray, a Tupperware tray full of chanterelle mushrooms. And he said, "Here you go. This is my extra." And in that moment, I was like, here it is. This is in front of me. This is an example of what's good. And I trusted him because he's also a naturalist. He knows more about the outdoors than I do. Um,
Sure.
all those sorts of things. I just trusted the guy. And from there on out, I was like, okay, I was able to soak up all the nuance of what was in front of me. And we talked about the ecology of the mushrooms. Because remember, the mushrooms are just the fruiting bodies of an organism that require a really specific environment to grow in. And when you start paying attention to like the little biospheres that they like, and just the natural history of things in general in the landscape, it starts to make more sense. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But he showed me those. I took them home. I just roasted them up. I sauteed them in butter. You use olive oil. I like them better in butter. And
Everything's better in butter.
yeah, I'm a butter person. I'll eat butter if you give me a chance. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so at that point, I'm like, okay, let's just go out and look. And that's the other big hurdle for people. It's one thing to be able to identify a mushroom, but where are you actually going to look? And you got to think about this carefully because I'm wearing orange tonight to proclaim how cool it is that you can just go onto public land, the public game lands, and wander around, right? You go to places like the state forest, state parks, they're all like, ooh, stay on the trail. You go to the game lands and there's none of that. You can go wherever. And they expect some level of foot traffic in the area, but they know that because let's say it's not like a scenic waterfall where they're going to get hundreds of people flocking to the same place. It's really kind of you might say a boring landscape if you don't know what you're looking at. So they don't make it where there's people patrolling, making sure you stay on the trail, right? So you can just go out there, take a different route each time, and start looking at the woods and the mushrooms. It turns out, coincidentally, all the mushrooms I look for, um, they like very old red oak trees, right? So northern red oaks, if you can identify those, and white oaks. Um, you want to find some that are like 100 years old, right? And that north facing slope where those trees get huge, we're talking really big. So getting your arms around the tree should be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, the state game lands in Pennsylvania have a lot of little pockets that are like that, and it might vary based in your state. But where I live, I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania, Columbia County. Um, the mushrooms I like, which are the chanterelles, the ram's head, also called maitake or sheep's head mushrooms. They like those gigantic red oak trees. And I've always found my chanterelles and maitake either at the base of a red oak or adjacent to a red oak of that size, like within 50 feet of a red oak of that size, or even a white oak. But the red oaks are more common. So if you learn your trees, that's going to be your first big step. Even if you're not looking for a chanterelle or a maitake, just learn your trees, because they'll say, I have yet to find anything like the spring mushrooms, the morels or morels, however you pronounce that. They say they associate with elms, but I have yet to find any. But also elms are rare where I live. So I guess step number 1 is learn your landscape. 2 is find a landscape to walk in. Try your state game lands, because they're awesome. They're public. You wear orange. You just go in with a backpack, come out a few hours later on your day off, and you just make a day of it. Just go wander around the woods for a couple hours off trail. You bushwhack a little bit. It's quite good fun. Have one of those water bottles where you just put it in a creek and you drink out of it, because it's got a filter you can suck through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you just keep your pack light, pack Ziploc bags, pack some paper towels, because the mushrooms they get soggy if you leave them in without a paper towel in your Ziploc, or even a paper bag would probably be better. But whatever you got, like, just go out there, wander around the woods, and start soaking up the details. And then you'll find yourself, like, trying to look at crevices, look at trees, look at unusual things, and the nuances will pop out a little more if you're familiar with it. But yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just pick different game lands each day that I take time to do it, and be like, okay, we're going to set aside 5 hours to state game land 55 or whatever it's going to be that day.
So what other kinds of mushrooms do you have there? Are those the 2 main ones that you have?
The chanterelles are my favorites. They're the color of my shirt. They're bright orange.
Oh,
I live, and they're the size of my hand.
see, to me, that would tell me danger.
Normally it would, and that's the thing. There's a look-alike in this area called the jack-o'-lantern that also is bright orange and the size of my hand, but it grows on dead things. So if you find a mushroom that's not growing on a dead thing, that's a good clue. It's not going to be your only clue, but you should immediately be suspicious if you're looking for your orange chanterelle and it happens to be on a dead log, because that's not a chanterelle.
Okay.
So those sorts of things. What's the mushroom growing on? That's really important. The color, of course, but sometimes the lookalikes have the same color. The substrate it's growing on, to me, is one of the most important things. Our chanterelles have little false gills. It's like the mushroom grows up and it pretends to grow gills, but it never grows the gills. It's just kind of faking it. And that's how they should look. But the lookalike has real gills. They look like little knife edges, super lined up, perfectly parallel on the underside. That's not a chanterelle. The other mushrooms we have, I like the maitake, which are the big clumps of brown polypores, pretty much. I think they're the polypores. They have a look-alike that's called a black staining polypore, but you can tell them apart because the false one, the one you don't want, turns black if you handle it. But I like the sheep's head, because there's not too much else other than the black staining polypore. It's just what it is. You look on the underside, it just looks like a flat surface. Maybe it's got little pores, but there's no gills. So you also learn mushroom anatomy when you start looking for mushrooms. You look at the gills, what it's growing on, even smell sometimes. I don't really use smell too much as a cue, because I've smelled random mushrooms in the woods and they smell fruity to me, which fruity is supposed to mean chanterelle. I don't trust that as much. But yeah, what's the other one I was going for? Oh yeah, there's another kind of chanterelle called a cinnabar, and it's bright red. But it's a mini version. It's super cute. It never gets much bigger than like I don't know, 4 inches.
So I Googled Wisconsin mushrooms.
Yeah.
I see the poisonous jack-o'-lantern over here.
Mm-hmm. See how that looks like a chanterelle, but it's growing out of like a dead area and it's a clump?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the chanterelles don't clump too much. I might find like 2 growing next to each other, but they usually have their own thing going on. They're not going to be like in a clump like that.
Have you heard of chicken of the woods, is it called?
Yeah, I started looking for that this year. I didn't have any luck with it though.
That is like a big thing around here.
Yeah, yep. And this is the right time of year for it too, I think.
Oh. What's this funny one?
That's morel.
Oh.
Yep.
And that one's okay to eat?
Yeah, that's a gourmet one. Sometimes the stores even carry them in dehydrated form if you go to the produce section.
Wow. Look how big that is.
They are kind of goofy looking.
Yeah.
I haven't found any. Those are next level difficult to find.
So are you saying these with the gills are not good?
No, that's not what we want. Although the other thing too is there is a mushroom with gills that I like, and it's the oyster.
Oh.
But our oysters are white and they form shells on logs that are dead. But that sulfur yellow color is not something I'd be into with when it has gills like that.
Okay, these are the mushroom names that I can't even pronounce.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too.
Huh. Very cool.
Some people eat the boletes. I don't know the pronunciation of that. It's a very big group of mushrooms. They're very common out here. And the undersides of the caps. Morel hunting is popular. Oh yeah, not too many of them. Yep, that's kind of how I feel about it here. Like if I haven't found one in the woods yet, maybe I'm not looking hard enough, but also they might not be common.
So do you carry a book with you or do you carry gloves? So if you come across one and you're not sure, you still pick it? Or do you Google Lens it or iNaturalist it on your phone?
So I I did that for a little while, and what I quickly realized was that I was going to have more success covering a really large area in a day. Rather than stopping at every mushroom, because you'll very quickly run out of time if you stop in a nice section of woods. There will be so many mushrooms you could lose
Really?
yourself after only covering a few acres, because you could sit there and go over the books and books over and over and then learn about the lookalikes, and there's a lot of confusion. I actually prefer to do all the learning ahead of time or on the back end, and I usually just leave things in the woods. I'll take pictures. Pictures are cool, but I typically will just leave things in the woods that I'm not looking for, and go out with the mission, being like, okay, I'm going to find maybe this thing or that thing. At this time of year, it's mostly the chanterelles. I want to look for cinnabars. I want to look for the orange ones and oysters. Maybe a maitake, but it's kind of early for the maitake still. Chicken of the woods. But if it's not one of those 5, I guess that's 5.
Yeah.
I'm probably just going to take a picture, flip it over, and then go on and move on. And I'd rather cover, because I use an Anais hunt app to track my path. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's a really cool app. It's one of the only few apps that I've ever bought a subscription to because it is so good. You can see landowners, but it'll track all these different properties. And my average track is like a 4-mile plus loop that's completely off trail. And I'd rather cover that kind of distance than get stuck in a small patch, because I found, like, even on my last trip out there, I wandered over about a 4-mile area, And all the chanterelles from that trip came from a patch that was 1/10 of an acre in area. Think about that though. Like, it takes so much traveling before you find the jackpot, but when you find the jackpot, you can fill 2 Ziploc bags with it.
Wow.
So that's my strategy, is just to cover a really large area with a mission in mind of what I want to find, and just be kind of brief with everything I don't know, because the truth is with mushrooms, there's so much you don't know. At the time, it's not even worth picking them up and trying to learn about them on the spot. You'll lose all your daylight that way.
Right.
It's
So
dependent.
Brian says, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very dependent on the microclimate of that spot. I agree. And that's the thing with chanterelles too, because they want so much moisture. One of my strategies for finding them is to go on a north-facing slope and walk down the slope, and then turn around so that I'm facing the slope again and look up the skirts of all the rocks sticking out of the ground. And sure enough, they start popping out because they're growing from under those north-facing overhangs, which makes the greatest amount of shade, I'm imagining. But you don't even notice, like, if you're walking down the slope thinking, oh, I think mushrooms are in this direction, you kind of skip over the fact that there's a lot of little mini microclimate overhangs from these rocks coming out the side of the mountain. They get covered with moss and ferns. They love growing out from under ferns. But yeah, the chanterelles connect to living tree roots. The mycorrhizal structure of the mushroom. What we eat is the fruiting body, but the actual part of the mushroom that digests things and metabolizes things, all of its body, I suppose, it's down in the ground and it's connecting to living tree roots. So maybe, I don't know, maybe those little overhangs provide them more access to the tree roots.
So this was one of the pictures you sent.
Yeah, that's an example of what cinnabar chanterelles, the tiny ones, look like in their natural habitat. They're really small, but they glow bright red.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Cinnabars are one of my favorites. I found them, and believe it or not, I found them right on the highest part of a ridge, which you would think is the driest part of the mountain, and they were just right up at the top there, over a parking lot.
Let's see if I can get the...
Maybe, I don't know, maybe cinnabars in Pennsylvania like the dry ridge tops. But you can see they're perfect little vases. You know, just mini chanterelles.
Wow, that just looks like warning to me. They're pretty though.
Mm-hmm.
Acorn?
Yeah, there's a ton of red oak trees.
Yeah.
Surrounding it. And that's, again, like kind of what I mean with the chanterelles. They seem to really like the red oaks.
Yeah. All right, what's this one?
That's the oyster mushroom. So oysters have, they make those flat shelves, and they do have gills. But the cool thing about them is that they also respawn, if you will. I don't know if you play video games. Mushroom finding's a lot like playing a video game where it has a spawn point and it respawns after waiting so much time. It'll respawn after you harvest it. A lot of mushrooms are like that. Once you know the spawn point of your favorite mushrooms, you got to go back and check again after the next rain or a couple weeks, because they're in the substrate.
That was my question. How long does it take them to regrow back to this point then if you take it all?
I don't know the exact amount of time. I do know that in this case with the oysters, and maitake's the same way. Once you have a tree that generates them, you want to save that tree's location because it's going to spawn more. But that one, I don't know the exact time, but that log that it's on has the oyster in it. So no matter how much I pick the top off, the fruiting body, it's just going to respawn. It's kind of cool. Now, oysters have a look-alike that also grows on dead branches.
Yeah.
The look-alike supposedly is not so good, but it grows on dead conifers, not dead broadleaf trees.
Oh.
So if you can identify if a dead tree is broadleaf or a conifer in its dead, decayed state, that's a very useful thing to be able to do. So in Wisconsin, you have eastern white pine, eastern hemlock, probably some red pine, Norway spruce, which is not invasive, but introduced species. You don't have to tell all those apart if it's dead on the ground, but if you can tell the remains of one of those conifers apart from, say, a dead ash tree, you'll be able to pick oysters and not pick the look-alike.
Okay.
This is a chanterelle growing out from underneath a rock. This is the visual example of what I was describing earlier, where if you're looking for the chanterelles on a north-facing slope, you want to walk down the slope, turn around, face the slope again, and then look with your eyes like at ground level up into
sure.
the faces,
Yep.
like under the rocks, and that's why.
Yep.
That's a nice big one right there. But yeah, the chanterelles have a very irregular form. It's different from, like, you go around in the woods and you see a bright red, perfectly round mushroom, perfectly symmetrical mushroom. That's not a chanterelle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oops. I think that's... What do we got? Oh, what's this?
Oh, that's one of my pictures. I don't know. I guess I sent it to you last time. That's my
maybe.
constrictor.
Who's that again?
Mr. Constrictor. I call him Bowtie too, but he usually goes by Mr. Snake or Mr. Constrictor. He's on the floor in my room with me too.
Oh boy. How are those honeybees doing?
So I don't know. When was our last show? Was that in April?
I think so.
Okay. So since then, actually probably like a week after our show, a crop sprayer started spraying like right next to the beehives.
Oh no.
And it wasn't the result you would have initially thought, with like, there weren't piles of dead bees on the ground or anything. It wasn't like that. But what did happen were every single colony within that following week had their larvae melt away and die.
Oh.
It was really bad. And it actually, I had called out like the bee inspector and done my own little investigation, like diagnostics, if you will, thinking, oh, did something I do cause this, or was it mismanagement? What happened? And I actually battled with this for the following 2 months. Like, it was so widespread, and I had colonies in another location that also succumbed to this problem. All the larvae just starving, melting down, dying away. And the colonies themselves, because they weren't raising babies, the adult population is rapidly declining. I actually bought bees to try and restock colonies that were dying, and then I also tried even doing double queen colonies to try and restore some of the life out of like something like 7 or 9 colonies I overwintered successfully. They all got it. It was really, really bad. I actually thought that I might lose them all over the summer, right at the time when you'd think the honeybees would be making honey the most. All their forage is in bloom. It was the end of May. Like, we had tulip tree out, we had black locust out, miscellaneous things like clover just starting, and my bees were dying uncontrollably. It was wild. And I had later found out and talked to other beekeepers. They said they had similar experiences when they lived next to crop fields. And gosh, I think I felt especially validated when I spoke to a beekeeper who took this to a commercial level by himself and started producing his own queens. And he told me he had that happen to him too. The worst outbreak of this larval disease he's ever seen happen when they sprayed the corn next to his bees. And I can't prove that's what it was, but gosh, I kept detailed records of what was going on in the colonies, and it was within, the first one came down like a 2 days after the spray, or 3 days. It was 72 hours after the spray. I recorded the first one starting to decline. And within the next 2 weeks, all of them were going. So I almost thought I was going to lose them until I started catching swarms again. And these swarms were coming from areas that weren't sprayed directly, I guess, because somewhere there were healthy bees and they were putting off these swarms. And I was catching them again and kind of like not starting over, but I had boxes of bees that were basically walking dead, and I was replacing them with these fresh swarms and giving the fresh swarms new housing and feeding them and trying to build them up to strength. So there was no spring honey to be gathered at all this year from all that happened, and no new queens really. I made like 4 queens just to try, but all the bees got ultimately replaced. All the ones that overwintered were ultimately replaced by new swarms I brought in, and new queens even I brought in, just because it was so hard on them. Now we're back up to the point where I have probably around a dozen colonies. So it almost looks like nothing happened if you were to look on paper and say, oh, this person started the year with almost a dozen colonies and it's about to end the season with about a dozen colonies. It looks like nothing happened when in fact there was a massive turnover. And now I finally have them all moved away from the crop fields. I figured out, okay, if this is the problem, we're just going to get them completely away from the problem. And I completely evacuated 2 full bee yards. I had some helpers. I had family help, and took everything down, took the fences down, took everything down. Bees moved out in the back of the pickup truck, and I got a hold of an organic farm only 10 minutes from Bloomsburg, where I live. Oh, here's a good one. My bees were definitely a little weird this year. That I was making cyclops bees, apparently.
And what does that mean?
Something's messed up when I don't know if it's an egg issue or the queen issue or an environmental issue, but it's definitely not normal for your honeybees to be cyclops like that. I guess it just goes to show the point, like, this was a very strange year for them.
So are they not supposed to be associating with her, or?
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. It's just your honeybees should have 2 large eyes and then their tiny little 3 eyes in the middle. They shouldn't have 1 giant eye.
Oh, I see it now.
Do you see her now? Yeah.
Yeah, that one off to the right, he was kind of
It looks
one-eyed.
It's like having a giant those ski goggles that are just full face. Yeah, it's pretty creepy.
That guy.
Yep. So my bees were not quite right, as you can see by this video.
Oh.
That actually wouldn't kill them. It was the larva dying that was killing them.
What's this one about?
Swarm alert. Oh, so did I mention in the last video that I picked up a job with Penn State Extension?
No, I was going to ask that, though, because I saw that on your page.
Yeah, I picked up work with Penn State's apiculture extension.
Cool.
I now travel to their research apiaries and I help with miscellaneous jobs like, oh, maybe we just need to inspect, or maybe we have to put stickers on honeybees to track their movements, or put little plastic cups on our virgin queens to see if it stops them from what was it? I think we're stopping them from killing each other with those things. Because when you put a plastic skirt on them, they can't sting each other and kill each other.
Oh.
Yeah, so it stops the virgins that are normally very aggressive towards each other from killing each other because they can't bend their abdomen to sting. So we were just having fun that day. That wasn't actually for research. That was us going through the colonies and being like, oh, let's try this thing out.
What's going on here?
That was one of my only colonies that seemed to survive, not only overwintering, but it survived the whole spray incident. So that colony ended up trying to swarm, and that swarm just kind of stuck on the side of the box waiting for better weather.
Okay.
And instead, I just kind of scooped them up and put them in another box. I was trying to save the queen cells. They didn't want queen cells, though, that I put them back when I put them back in.
So what did they do? Push them back out?
No, I kept the swarm. They ended up what's the word? I was trying to make new queens with them. So I had to take all the bees that I had separated out to make the new queens, and I had to put them back with the original swarm, which had a virgin or the original queen in it. So I just kind of had to manipulate them around. That's when I was catching the swarms to replace the losses.
Oh.
I'm able to convince the bees to move into a box just because the box smells like a furnished house as far as they're concerned. Because the box has maybe a couple new frames, but also an older frame with brood comb, and I get some wax on it and then put some lemongrass oil. And when you put lemongrass oil on a bee box, it somehow mimics the pheromones given off by, I think it's the queens. The queens give off a pheromone that just so happens to be the same smell as lemongrass. So then you get whole colonies move into these boxes for free.
Dang. There's a lot to know with this stuff.
It's a lot of good fun, though, because swarm catching is like playing the lottery, but it's super cheap. You just hang a box up and you wait for the freebies to come in. And if they don't, it's whatever. But when they do, you sometimes get a really nice colony that way.
Just gonna, and you can go, this is your page.
The Bun Bun Bees, which is official, by the way. I have the fictitious name registered now. The Bun Bun Bees business.
Oh, cool. Tell me what this is.
This is a Varroa mite. It is a mite. It's probably like, oh, I don't know. You could fit probably 5 or 6 on a tiny pinky nail. They're very small. They cling to honeybees when the honeybees are babies, as well as when the honeybees are adults, and they suck out the life force, the juices in them. They suck out these fat bodies. So bees have in their abdomens, I want to say, I wouldn't call it fat. I think a better word for it would be like a liver, basically a tissue that holds a lot of important proteins and fats for their little bodies to work. And those mites will suck that out, and they target it. And they also sometimes feed on the bee's blood. I think there's some research done showing they feed on the blood when there's larvae, and then the fat bodies as adults. It's complex, but they suck the life out of your honeybees in all phases of the honeybee's life, except when it's an egg. And they transmit diseases to the bees because when they bite the bees, or like little ticks or mosquitoes, with dirty needles for mouths, and the viruses get into the bees, and the bees' bodies did not evolve to cope with threats in their blood. Bees are very good at defending against mouth-to-mouth pathogens. They do a lot of mouth-to-mouth feeding and exchanges in the colony as part of like their normal behavior, but they didn't evolve to have little needles, dirty needles stuck into their sides. And the viruses transmitted by those Varroa mites is really nasty. One of them shrivels up their wings, so the bees will emerge after pupating with tiny little shriveled wings that can't do anything. All they do is maybe they'll live long enough to be a housekeeping bee, but they'll never fly. So you can imagine at a large scale how that could impact the colony. Then you don't have foragers, and it's nasty what they do. A lot of beekeeping is centered around how do you kill a bug on a bug
Right.
without killing the bug that you want to keep?
Hmm.
And it's kind of neat. Where I'm working, the same apiculture program, that they had done studies showing that organic beekeeping practices, such as using only organic miticide chemicals, is just as effective as using synthetics against these little nasty mites. Which is good, because that means we don't have to put synthetic chemicals in the colonies to kill them, to kill the mites.
Yeah.
If we don't want to. I mean, organic treatment's good, but if left unchecked and you don't treat your bees, couple things could happen. One, your colony could just collapse. The other thing that could happen over lots and lots of generations of losses is you get bees that are resistant to the mites, but it takes many generations of losses and a tight enough isolated population of bees where that natural selection can take effect. But most of the beekeepers in the continental USA are going to have a hard time getting that isolated population to the point where you can select for that. Some people have done it though, and it's really cool, because then they make queens and they could sell the queens out to other people, and you eventually get some bees that have some resistance to the mites, but you still treat them, but maybe you don't have to treat them as much, and you get like a happy balance somewhere.
Yeah.
But the mites came from Asia, from another related honeybee species.
Oh, geez. Okay. Sorry, guys. I haven't been keeping up on the questions, but Bonnie, Brian asked a mushroom question. We'll go back to the mushrooms in a little bit, but Bonnie is asking what happens to the bees in the colder temperatures?
So in cold temperatures, individual bees can't really fly. They need the heat from the environment, to a point. Like, they can make some heat in their bodies when they shiver their flight muscles, but individually they don't do so well. When you talk about a colony, though, the first thing that happens in the fall is the bees start producing workers that have this amazing ability to live for months. And normally, honeybee workers die within a few weeks of foraging.
Mm-hmm.
But these bees that start developing in the fall, I guess it's in response to the shortening days or something. I don't know. But these bees live for months. They can live 6, 7, 8 months. Then these bees just huddle together and they slowly climb up the comb, eating honey as they go. So they start at the bottom of their box, just clustered really, really tight, and then they move up super slow, eating the honey that they stored all season as they go. Eventually they reach the top of their box. Hopefully at that point it's spring. That's what the plan is. A lot of times it doesn't go that way, and they kind of just spread out, start looking for honey on the edges. All it takes is a cold snap and all those bees on the edge just die. So ideally you have all your food above your bees in the winter so that they can continuously move up in a nice little tight unit together, and they never have to spread out and go looking for their food too far. But weird things happen. Cold snaps happen. Hot spells definitely happen. I had bees foraging pollen in February.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long does it take them to get through that?
Through all that food. It depends on the type of bee and how much they're moving in the winter. So when they're flying around a lot in the winter, they're burning calories and not getting calories from the environment. That's not good. They'll burn through their food really quick, like just a few months if you let them. If the bees are kept perfectly cold and still, there's actually some studies done on like overwintering bees in buildings that are perfectly controlled for that climate.
Mm-hmm.
Bees don't go flying around wasting energy. Like in Canada, they actually do that. They overwinter their bees in a giant shed.
Oh.
Yeah. So doing that helps keep them tight and just moving up slowly, eating food slowly. It's amazing. They can tolerate levels of carbon dioxide that would really kill a lot of animals, just because they don't have lungs. They can soak it up through they got little spiracles in their exoskeleton. But even still, they're tolerating massive amounts of carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Being in that tight little cooped up box with thousands of others clinging on them, like it's incredible. But yeah, they just long story short, they huddle up real tight. They make bees that live a long time, and then they just eat food slowly.
Huh. Next question is Brian's asking, do the queens die after stinging like a normal bee would?
Their stingers are not barbed, so they don't get caught in flesh.
Oh,
And because they don't get caught, they don't rip out their guts when they finish the stinging process. That's what happens to the regular bees. The barb makes it so hard for them to pull themselves free that their guts come loose quicker than the barb comes loose.
dang.
So queens don't die after stinging, and they actually sting each other. They're evolved to sting each other when they're virgins and fight. You know, who's going to be the top dog in the beehive, and so that they're meant to actually sting repeatedly.
And then going on to the mites, Brian asked, what are organic treatments to mites for bee colonies?
So we use chemicals that are derived from organic things, such as formic acid, which is in a lot of ants. So ants can spray formic acid.
Look what you just did.
Yeah, we have little pads that are like slow release. I haven't used them yet, but the tricky thing with that is like temperature. A lot of these are temperature dependent. If it's too hot, the oils, vapors release too quickly. It's really bad for your bees. But another one is thymol. So like, you know, the thyme plant, or the oils in that plant can be condensed to the point where it's actually like a miticide. So we have these thymol-based products that are little pastes that we put on cardboard strips, and then the bees have to eat the paste. They don't eat the paste. They pick it up, move it around, and clean it out of the hive. And the act of doing that, all that housekeeping, because they view it as an impurity, it stinks for them. They think it smells horrible, and they'll fan, and they start bearding, and they try to get it out of there. And as they're getting it out of there, they're circulating the oils, and the oils kill the mites.
Oh.
Another one is oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is in spinach. It's in daisies and other plants. It's a very widespread acid in nature. It's in our food.
Mm-hmm.
At concentrated levels to the point where it's a crystal. It can be sublimated, which means you could take that crystal and heat it up so fast and so hot that it goes from a crystal state to a gas rather than going to a liquid. And when that happens, you basically put this thing in your beehive. It looks like you're about to vaporize a colony. And it's called vaporization. You wear a whole gas mask. I have one in the basement. You wear this mask and you put the vaporizer in the colony and through a little hole, and you blast them with this vapor, and somehow the bees are cool with it, but it hurts the mites. It's kind of wild what the bees tolerate when you think about what you're doing. Like, you're sticking in this vaporizing at 400 degrees. I don't even know how many degrees it is. It's just incredibly hot. The bees are fine with it. Another way is, like, you can even take that oxalic acid, the crystals, mix it in sugar syrup, and you drizzle it over the bees themselves as a liquid, and it somehow distributes enough of it where it hurts the mites. And then there's complexities involved where the concentrations of these treatments are either strong enough or not strong enough to kill the mites that are living underneath the brood cappings. So honeybees, when they're pupating, the honeybees will seal off the little cells that the babies are in with a little wax cap, and it's velvety. It's kind of soft when you touch it.
Mm-hmm.
These cappings are like somewhat permeable, somewhat not permeable. I guess it depends on what's getting through, but it allows the little pupa underneath to breathe without letting in dirt and impurities. So the mites are pretty happy living under there too, because they're protected with the pupa. And your treatments sometimes don't reach underneath that capping to kill the mites under the cappings. If they're not strong enough. So it's always a matter of, like, how strong do you want to make it? What's the label say? what's the temperature outside? How many bees do you have? Can they handle this? But those are some examples of organic mite treatments that we know we have good data on that is effective.
Wow. Any other questions? It's very fascinating stuff. All right. Brian had a question going back. Um, hang on. That was the queen one. He asked, is there a particular season that most edible mushrooms are prevalent?
To me, it feels like it's in the late summer going into fall, just because of the ones I like are chanterelles and maitake. Those are my favorite. But oysters technically can grow like into November, December in Pennsylvania. And then if you're into morel hunting, that's in the spring. That would be March, April. I guess it depends what you're looking for, but minus the oyster, you're not going to find too much in the winter. My favorite's definitely the fall, though, because you can get some really big finds of chanterelles and maitake as you go from late August into September, October.
Oh, I bet, given it enough time to grow. And
yeah,
very fascinating stuff. So this is a flying show. So we talked about bees. They fly.
yes,
What about you? Have you been flying?
I have. This past week this week and the week before it, so end of August, really, I had a lot more. I want to say I made more time for flying, but also the weather settled down to the point where I was comfortable flying again, even though it had been a full year since the last time I had the paramotor out.
Wow.
And yeah, it was way too long, but I had it out. I started by doing some practicing on the lawn, just standing there running the motor, getting it comfortable on my back and everything, doing some walking, power walking, basically going through the stages I did in training to get used to it again.
Yep.
And then I was happy, and I was just ready to go, and I had some really good flights. I tracked it on Gaggle, and I figured out how to import those into Google Earth too.
I saw that.
Yeah. But I really like that, and I figured out that here where I live, you can't always have a beautiful flat grassy area as your bailout. If you really want to get into the terrain and enjoy it, you kind of have to accept the fact that some outs for a couple minutes might have to be the corn or the soy. But there's a bit of a trade-off. If I didn't accept that, I'd be missing out on a lot out here. But I just love getting low over the trees. Like, that's my thing. I know everyone's got their own threshold of risk, but for me, man, getting low over those trees is the best. And what I'll do is I'll try to get, into the wind at least, and have the bailout on a direction that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a way down to land that's not tree. Because I really don't want to be landing in a tree.
Because you don't want to call your parents or a friend and say, can you come get me out of a tree?
Yeah, it's no good. But I do love getting really low over trees to the point where I can see hickory nuts growing.
Oh, geez.
Oh, I do love the trees. I think it's because I can see them from an angle I don't normally get to see. And as I'm flying over, I'm like, that's a black walnut. That's a bitternut hickory. That's an eastern white pine.
So Brian wants to know what you got for flying.
I have a Macpara Charger 2. I like to fly it on the middle trim setting. If I'm going really fast, I'll just, at altitude, I'll let the trims out. But I really like the middle trim setting on it. And I have an Eclipse frame with an Atom 80. I believe it's the model year 22.
Okay.
2022 on that. And I'm flying it with 50-to-1 oil mix. That's probably standard for a lot of machines. I don't know what anyone else is running on theirs, but the break-in period, it wanted 40-to-1 for quite a while, but it's back up to 50-to-1.
Okay. And Wendy was in here and said that they were sorry that they missed you
I know. I
at
really
Aurora.
to see them, to see everybody there. It's just I was working till 4 that night, and then I was still going to be probably an hour and 30 minutes away if I were to
Yeah.
drive, and then have to drive home because I had to work the bees in the morning the next day.
Yeah. What
The
size wing do you have?
I want to say, I mean, it's right here, I guess.
Oh, you don't have to take
I
it
think
apart.
21 or 23. I think it's 21.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a small wing, but
Cool.
I'm also small. Like,
Yep.
it's not like I'm flying a fast wing to be fast. It's just I'm a small pilot. Like, yeah.
Yep. What color was your wing?
This one was yellow underneath and red and orange on top with the black little marks.
Okay.
It's a standard color configuration for the Charger 2s.
Nice.
I don't know. Do they make Charger 3s now? It's been a while.
I don't know. I had my original was a Mac Paracharger.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not good on all the products.
Yeah, no. I love this wing, though. I liked Ozone growing up with paragliding.
Yeah.
Very, very nice wings. But I don't know. I like this Charger more just because it's got the trims, but I'm sure Ozone has wings with trims too. I just haven't had a chance to fly those. I've only ever flown the ones that were meant for paragliding. So
Yeah. So what other kinds of fun stuff have you done this summer?
Let's see.
Did you go anywhere?
No, I don't.
Get to the ocean at all, or?
I miss the ocean big time. I definitely miss the ocean. It's the Jersey in me coming out, just like.
How far away are you from the ocean?
Huh?
How far away are you from the ocean?
Probably a good 6 hours.
6 hours?
Yeah. Probably.
And do any hiking besides mushroom hunting?
What's up?
Do you do any hiking at all, or?
The hiking I do is just like that off trail foraging type stuff.
Yeah.
I did go hiking earlier in the year before the mushrooms were coming out, and I was exploring an area where it was abandoned mines and like it. I didn't go in. That's scary stuff. But the area of the game lands where I was hiking, it used to just be a colliery, like a giant coal processing station, and it grew up into a forest in the last 100 years. So you could go around and find like the old, I guess the mine carts, a little bit back. You could find the holes and the grates and everything. It's kind of creepy and cool at the same time. And the smoke coming out of those caves, man, I don't trust that there's not a body in there. Like, it's creepy but cool.
I grew up with a gal that her parents had as my dad said it, when he was little, it was a gold mine. And I think that's what you said, Dad. And I think Dad's listening. But anyway, we went back there, and then she had me so scared because her parents said that they found a guy, like a homeless guy, living back there. And we're like, no, we're not going back there. But we still explored back there, and we wouldn't go in, though. We were too scared.
Yeah, I went in about like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Over, like, towards the overhang, and I just can't do it anymore because there's areas too, because of the way they dug the coal out in Pennsylvania. You got the terrain and then it just drops.
Yeah.
It's just a cliff in the middle of the woods, and it drops down 50 feet and it goes back up another 50. And if you were walking in the dark, and that's the thing, these are the state game lands. You could be hunting, and if you're a hunter out in the morning in the dark, there's certain parts I wouldn't trust it at all. Like,
wow.
That ground really drops out from you. It's fun though. I like it.
All right. Well, what time? It's almost 8 o'clock already. That was an hour, and I know you're busy. So, I just want to say hi to everybody. So Brian and Bonnie Franz are in here. They were friends of ours that met up with us and drove over to Oshkosh, the EAA Air Adventure. Kramer, I saw, she's down at Lone Star. She got rained out tonight. She's waiting to fly tomorrow. John Wayne was doing his exercises. Let's see, Linda's here. She's rooting us on. And Bill H was in here. Saw Wendy in here. You guys have been talking. JP Tulu was in here. We haven't seen him in a while. I hear from him every once in a while. He was wondering who was all going to Purdon's in Ohio this coming weekend.
It's been a year since that one too.
Yeah.
Wild.
2 feet and a heartbeat. I think he was at Aurora, and I met him last year. Aaron, I think he lives in New York, and he's in here. So thank you guys. Chuck Dodge is in here from Minnesota. He's a powered parachute PPC pilot. And so anyway, oh, Randy's in here. Randy Milstead. Where's your wife? Not sure where Deweese is. She's MIA. So she wasn't feeling good earlier today. So, but yeah, thank you so much on the mushrooms. Oh, and I do have to show the final picture of what got me wanting you to come on the show. Hang on, I gotta scroll through here. So check this out. What she, of course, now, here we go. Doesn't that look yummy?
Yeah, I was throwing those in the oven, just roasted them up.
Wow.
That's what I mean, though. If you wander 4 miles and in only 1/10 of an acre, you'll find all of that. So it's worth going out and looking. I enjoy it.
Yeah. And then you had some other, the other pictures of
The oyster.
Yep. And the studying.
Oh yeah, that was fun. We worked a lot that day. But we'll be out there tagging bees and eating cookies and scones, and we just have a great time. We just sit there and you're staring at bees all day.
What do you take the bees with? Is it like a paint pen?
We use glue and we just put stickers on them.
Glue and stickers. Huh.
I think there'll be a paper coming out this year on it. I mean, I'm not writing it or anything, but members of our team will be and everything, and we'll get to talk more about that when it comes out. But yeah, we get to put stickers on bees.
Oh, Planet Shane is in here. He says, my bad memory is bad. I don't trust it to recall which shrooms will kill me or not.
Oh yeah. I have a saying when I go out in the woods and I go and I look at a mushroom and I might flip it over, and sometimes I'll just walk away. I'm like, that's called an all hell no.
Wait, what? I missed it.
Like, don't eat that.
Yeah.
You know, most of them fall in that category. You gotta be certain with these.
So, have you heard any of the people that have eaten the wrong ones? What's happened to them?
No, I haven't, not personally.
Okay.
What I understand, it's not like a black and white. It's more of just like, okay, you could have a mushroom that's totally fine for you, and maybe you just undercook it and you get a little sick. Or you have a mushroom that's perfectly fine for you, and you do many of them, and like anything else, you can get sick from that. Or you have one that's you eat 2 of them and you feel a little sick. Or there'll be a mushroom where it's like you eat a fraction of one and it makes you very sick. Kind of like this gradient.
Shane says liver failure doesn't sound pleasant.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Nope.
All right. Well, sorry, Randy, to hear that you're not feeling well now either. You can't blame us, though, because I think we're doing okay. So they just came from our house and they made it home.
Okay.
Overtired. So, or they miss Wisconsin is probably what it is. Well, if I find any mushrooms, I will take pictures of them and send it your way to see if it's safe, or I'll do my own investigating and see what I can come up with.
Sounds good. I can always point you in the direction of like, here's stuff to look for, and maybe it'll help teach you what to look for rather than me being like yes or no. Because that's how I learned. Like, here's the stuff to look for, and you start learning how to categorize them by those traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Shane is thankful for you that knows what you're talking about.
I know a little bit. I really don't know that much. It's just enough to get a couple goodies here and there.
Well, we wish you luck with your honeybees too, and hopefully the airplane doesn't kill off your colonies again.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It won't. I moved the bees. They're in a happy place now. There is potentially a much happier ending to this, where they're actually working a knotweed flow right now. They're working the knotweed growing up along the creeks, and I watched them bring it in, and I could smell it, and I could see it when I bust open the hive. So maybe they're going to make honey for me after all.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Good. Oh, yeah. And don't forget, tomorrow night is Linda's show, Paramom USA. Check out Lindy's Treehouse with Kramer. They're doing a great job in talking on different subjects. She kind of keeps it to herself, though, on surprising what, I don't know. I saw she posted something, so I'm not sure if she said what her show is going to be on tomorrow night. And for all those that are at the Purdon Fly-In coming up, please fly safe, be smart, fly smart. So I'll let you know if we're having a show next week or not. We don't have a guest right now, so still flying season. So I guess we're just going to say goodnight. And Annie, thank you so much for everything again tonight. We'll have you on maybe next year again.
Alrighty.
All right. Good night, guys. Have a good night.